in this day and age, with the frequency of travel, with the internet, with the immediate availability to see what's happening anywhere in the world as it's unfolding, it's just, we're in a new place. We're in a new place. And sometimes what happens when we're in a new place, it's not that comfortable, right? And especially as we're facing this kind of a new disease. So we're in a new place, we've got a new disease, and it can tend to be a little frightening. It can tend to make us very nervous or anxious. And that's really what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how we might show up while all of this is unfolding and things are shifting under our feet day by day. In a time of crisis, what the world needs is for people to show up calm, compassionate, strong, through the strength and grace of God. That's how we find ourselves in that place of being. When we find ourselves feeling fearful or anxious, what we can do is just shift our perspective. Now, that might sound, a little bit easy. Okay, just shift our perspective, right? Well, that's where we start. That's where we start. And so what I want to do today is I want to talk with you and explore how we might do this, how we might be able to find a way to replace fear with faith, to let go of those worries and concerns, and know that God is present in us, through us, as us, always there. There is no place that God is not. So what I want to do is I want to look at the Bible and see how is there an example, and there are so many examples in the Bible of how we learn about God, how we connect to God, how we show up in relationship with others. And the story that jumps out at me comes from the Hebrew Testament, and it's the story of David and Goliath. And I'm looking at Sherry right now because I've been teaching a class on the quest, and we just used that story to look at how the metaphysical interpretation, what it offers us, how each person, event, and situation actually represents us, and how a story that comes from so long ago can still be relevant, and how it can influence how we live our daily life. So let's go. The beginning of the story that's found in Samuel verses 4 to 51. In the beginning of the story, the Philistines are waging war on the Israelites, and there is a fierce battle. And after some time, this huge warrior who's big and frightening and powerful, and his name is Goliath, and he comes out and he challenges the Israelites. And he says, "Send me one of your men to fight me for victory." And he continues with this challenge, with this taunt, morning and night for 40 days. And the Israelites are filled with fear. Now, we can look at this story and realize that our Goliath right now is this health challenge. And perhaps some of our fears and concerns about the economy and what impact is going to unfold as everything kind of stops. That's our Goliath. And what we also realize in the taunting that Goliath is doing in those 40 days, it can be likened to listening to the news. You know, the news is also emotionally charged. And so this comes at us, 24 hours a day. This is the story now. And, it can incite fear and concern in people. You kind of catch that energy, catch that idea, that concern, that fear. It is contagious. And it also can be in the news and in the conversations that we're having. And if we look at it even closer, what we can realize is that it might just be for us that fear that maybe this is just too overpowering, too overwhelming to face. But then along comes David, right? And David isn't a warrior, but he comes up to Saul and he says, I can kill the giant. I will face him. Now, David is just a poor shepherd boy. So what do we know about David being a shepherd? We know that he spends a lot of time alone. And again, when we look at that metaphysically, we can see that being alone gives us time to be in the silence, to become prayed up. And we know that David has a tremendous faith in God. This is what's motivating him. And Saul then offers David his armor, but David refuses. So who is Saul? Who is Saul to us? I'm getting answers from the audience. That's wonderful. And Saul could also represent to us that part of us that wants to follow God's will, but we're not really there. You know, that in-between place. Have any of you ever had a moment where you're saying, thy will be done, but I really, really want this? This has to happen this way, okay? All right. But David didn't pick up Saul's armor. So what does David represent for us? David represents that spiritual nature that we all are. David represents our being able to, from that spiritual place within us, from our Christ nature, from our Christ center, being able to face the problem from a higher level. Because David didn't face Goliath on Goliath's terms, did he? He didn't do that. He knew that he couldn't beat Goliath in a sword battle. That wasn't what he was trained to do. In protecting his sheep as a shepherd, and sheep again are thoughts, and he had learned how to control, how to protect, how to work with his sheep, and he had become extremely skilled in using a slingshot. So David doesn't address Goliath on the terms of Goliath. And I think that's a term that we can kind of understand, right? We've heard you don't address a problem on the level of a problem. Instead, David says something to Goliath that I want to read. He says, you come to me with a sword and a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand. David comes with God. David comes with God. Now, what this tells us right away, this is our message. Put God first. Let go and let God. Let God fill your need. Let God work with the problem. We don't have to know the solution. We just have to show up with an open heart, with an open mind that's allowing us to unite with the Christ mind so that divine ideas can flow through us and guide us, inspire us, and help us as we face this challenge or any challenge in life. And letting go and letting God doesn't mean that we don't do anything, right? It doesn't mean that we just sit back, let go, and let God. Okay, I'm looking for my results. No, that's not even what happens in the story, because the story goes on where David addresses this challenge by rushing towards Goliath. He doesn't, in fact, in the story, it says he runs. He runs towards Goliath. Now, isn't this a beautiful example of faith? He doesn't stay rooted in his space, in his spot. He doesn't take a step back. He is confident. He knows, he believes entirely that with God, he's going to be victorious. He has no doubt in his mind. And he runs towards Goliath and he picks up his slingshot and he aims it and he gets a direct hit right into the forehead, the place of intellect, and Goliath goes down. So we all have this place of intellect within us, our place of thoughts and feelings, and this is where the fear and the concerns and all of that, what we call monkey mind, all of that activity goes on. And so David actually cuts the whole intellect off, and the Philistines flee. They're gone. Can we do something like that too? Can we actually have enough faith, have enough trust in God? Can we be filled up with God, putting God first, seeing God's activity in our life so that we are able to just be free? Those fears, those concerns, those worries, they just leave us. They dissolve. They actually dissolve. And we're able then to step into life the way that we are called to, especially in this time of crisis, with strength, with calmness, with compassion, with alertness, being responsible not just for ourselves, right? But responsible for everyone. And what we can do with that is to realize that we are connected. We talked about that before. We are connected. And maybe this is a time where we have to be a little bit more vigilant about that. Calling and checking in with our neighbors, making sure that people are okay. How can I help? How can I serve? David didn't kill Goliath for just his own good. He did it for Israel. David did it for the people of God. And we are those people of God, and we can show up differently. I was talking to Sam earlier. Sam is working in the hospital. He is a prayer chaplain, and I have had the opportunity of starting just in March as a prayer chaplain in Lee Memorial. And I want to share two stories with you that came up within these last couple of weeks. And the first one is I went into a room and there was a woman there, and she shared with me that she had just received information that there is going to be no further treatment for her cancer. And I could see that she was just absorbing this news. And I listened. And I was able to hold her in that space of my heart, being open, being loving, being this energy of God's light and love in the room with her. And I asked her if she had faith that could help her at this time. And she shared with me that she did, that she had a faith. So we talked a little bit about that, and then I was able to pray with her. And I also talked with a man, and he was sharing with me that when he recovered and was able to leave the hospital, he had nowhere to go, that he was homeless, that he was living in the woods off of Ortiz. And I listened to him share with me that he had returned to Florida to try to connect with his family, but they were very angry still, and they didn't want to have anything to do with him. And he was hurt, and he was lonely, and he was confused. And I listened without judgment. I listened from that place that I just shared with you before, which is the openness of seeing God in everyone, with compassion, with love. And I was also able to share with him that the name of an organization that we have right here in our community called We Care, because I had met the woman who runs that organization, Tanya, at one of our back to school events. And I know that what she does is she works with and assists and has provisions for those who are homeless. And then I prayed with him. And the reason that I'm bringing up these two topics is because life is always going to have challenges. It can be emotional challenges, it can be relationship challenges, health challenges. It doesn't have to be this global pandemic. It can be anything that roots us in fear, in concern, and maybe immobilizes us, because fear can be an immobilizing energy. Talking about letting go and letting God isn't just an affirmation, a wonderful positive affirmation. It's actually a way of life. It's how we show up every day. It's how we're able to, as David was talking about, come from that higher level of consciousness, come from that Christ center, that Christ light that's within us. One of the readings that we had was from the Unity minister and author, Mary Kupferle. And she was talking about the same thing. Let go and let God handle your problems. Open up your heart and your mind so that you have this presence of God within that is moving in you and through you and as you, inspiring, guiding, and empowering you. And I want to read a little bit more of what she says. And she says, place yourself in God's care. Give your loved ones to God's gentleness and compassion. Turn your life over to divine wisdom with complete confidence and listen to the guidance that comes to you. Tell yourself again and again, yes, God, I am willing to let go. I am ready to let you handle it all. Take a deep breath, and as you release it, know that everything is in God's tender, loving care. And we do this. We get to this place by prayer. We get to this place by prayer because prayer has power. And we know that, right? Especially here in Unity, we focus on prayer. As Sam said at the beginning, Unity was built as a prayer practice. We had prayer circles. We still have Silent Unity available 24/7 to receive and pray with anyone who calls. prayer changes us. And by changing us, it changes everything. Prayer opens that channel so that we can experience God, so that we can feel that light, that love, that substance, that divine mind, divine ideas. We can feel it moving in us, guiding us, inspiring us, taking us into the action like David. In fact, if we look back at that story, the main lesson that jumps out to me is the perspective that David had. David didn't have the same perspective that the Israelites had. They were looking at the battlefield with fear and the armor, the warriors, the weapons. But David didn't use that perspective. David's story is one of faith. David knew and believed entirely that he would be victorious. There was no question in his mind because he knew that God was with him. He knew he was showing up through the activity of God within him. Faith is that power within us that lets us know, believe, and feel that God is present. It lets us see God and see the truth in every moment. And David listened to his own inner inspiration. He knew that he would be guided, and he wasn't influenced by outside situations and people and sources. And we too can find that inner guidance when we become still, when we become quiet, when we listen to the activity of God within. Prayer is so important, not just for us. It does change us, but it's not important just for us. It's important for the world, especially right now. And that's what I want to invite you to do with me, to realize and recognize that in this time of crisis, in this time where things are shifting and moving under our feet, and it's incredible, isn't it? Just this 1 week, so many, I keep coming home and it's like a new thing is closing or shutting down, or concerns about this and concerns about that. It's an ongoing situation right now. So now more than ever, we need to step up. We need to step up with prayer and hold this higher consciousness for all people, for our world. Thank you. invite you to just relax into these thoughts that God is here. God is present with us. And that we just open up our minds and our hearts, allowing this space to be filled with the Christ mind, to be filled with divine ideas moving in us and through us and as us. Knowing that we always have the power, the strength, the love, and the grace of God available to hold us, to lift us, to move us through any and every life challenge. We just need to remember to stop, to relax, and to move out of our thoughts and emotions and feelings into that space, that beautiful, expansive space of oneness with God. Let go and let God move in you, in your life. And I invite you now to just think about this idea and let it take hold in every part of your being in the silence. Let the power of faith fill you with a knowing that everything is in divine order, that I'm in the flow with God. I am one with God. And in this time of prayer, I am inspired and I am strengthened. And I'm able to walk through this day and any day, every day, with God guiding me, filling me, loving me into action. And so it is. Amen.